Well, I have my three pals and we're off to the CBC to protest with other citizens of concern about the CBC drag kids and how taxpayers have funded this, how the CBC does nothing, and what they produced was an act of crime. We'll see you there. And here is CBC in downtown Toronto. And these are some other protesters we met for coffee just before we went and did our thing. People from all over the province came, not a large crowd, but large enough, and we spread ourselves right along the sidewalk in front of CBC.
As much as I wish we didn't have to be here, we need to be here. We have no choice at all. Because if you and I don't speak up for our children, who will? And this is what I'm finding. This year it's just gotten worse. And I don't know if any of you have noticed, but it's just gotten so much worse this year, this summer.
Yes.
And we're finding that our leaders and our people in authority, they're not listening. And they're not taking these concerns for our children and their protection seriously. And we're going to have the snowbirds interrupting us a little bit, which is not so bad. Friends, we're here for one reason, one purpose. Really, it's not a CBC protest. It's not a political protest. It is not a nationalist protest. We are here for our children. That's what we're here for. The children of our country, our children, our grandchildren, our nieces, our nephews, the children of our local schools, the children of our churches, the children of our towns and cities and communities. We're here for our children. We need to defend them. We need to deliver them. We have no choice to protect the needy, the innocent, the weak, our children. We're called to defend them, but we have to do this. We have no choice, because the people and the institutions and the authorities that should be defending and delivering them are not. And we are here in front of this institution, this Canadian institution, CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. We are here because this institution is choosing to be complicit in the exploitation and the corruption of our children.
And funded by our taxes.
And we have no choice. When CBC decided to promote and hype and air a documentary program called Drag Kids, which they did just over a month ago, July 25th, they made an absolutely reckless and irresponsible decision. Nothing like this has happened before. Nothing before. The CBC decided that they are going to abandon our nation's children, to promote their corruption and destruction, to put novelty and LGBT politics ahead of child safety and protection. And I would suggest that their decision is not only irresponsible, but it is criminal. CBC decided in 2019 that they would advance the cause of a fringe element, a very small fringe element within the LGBT rights movement, an element that wants to take our children, to bring them into that element, to bring them into that movement, to sexualize them, to groom them, and ultimately to destroy them, I believe. I'm sure people like Benjamin Levin would be quite pleased with what the CBC is doing. As you know, he's the former Deputy Education Minister and a convicted child pornographer. That is the type of people that CBC seems to be catering to these days. Instead of protecting our children, safeguarding their innocence, combating those who would prey upon them, and I believe that is the role of a national broadcaster. Instead of protecting them, defending them. They decided to normalize and glamorize a hideous and reprehensible practice, the practice of child drag. Now, how many of you before this summer have ever heard of child drag? Has anyone heard of it? I mean, it's very new. This is a new phenomenon. It would have been unimaginable, I think, even 5 years ago. I don't think anyone would have imagined it. And even a year ago, we wouldn't have imagined that our national broadcaster would be glamorizing and glorifying this practice. It is absolutely unbelievable. Child drag, let me give you a definition here. Child drag is the grooming and the use of young, impressionable children for the purpose of providing lewd, adult entertainment, sexually saturated, by means of these children performing like exotic dancers. It involves putting them into an environment that would be previously reserved for frequenters of burlesque shows, bathhouses, and brothels. That is the environment that these children are being put into. We are seeing these children made to believe that they have to find their value and their self-worth not in who God made them to be, not in their gifts and their abilities. They are being told and taught that their self-worth and their value is found in how well they arouse adult strangers, how well they perform in sexually explicit, sexually saturated performances. The children that CBC featured and glamorized in Drag Kids were as young as 9 years old. Can you imagine 9 years or younger? Because these kids, the ones they featured, were 9, 10, 11, and 12. There are 4 of them, 3 boys and 1 girl. And they don't just start out at age 9, I'll tell you. This is starting when they're 4 and 5 and when they're younger, okay, to get them to that point. And that 9-year-old goes by the name of Lactatia, which means lactating, a boy who goes by that name. And I just wanted to, I don't want to have us dwell on this too much because it is a horrible thing to think about. But here we have little children, okay, and I want you to think of your own children or grandchildren, nieces and nephews. I want you to think of people in your life. So imagine little children who should be playing outside, who should be doing their schoolwork, who should be having fun with their friends and their neighbors, little children who should know nothing of sex and sexuality and sexual arousal and sexual orientation. They should know nothing of these things. These little children are being dressed up like prostitutes, basically. They're being dressed up like exotic dancers. These are boys mainly. They're being dressed up in this exaggerated makeup, put in women's dresses. They're being put in high heels. They're made to learn dance moves that strippers learn. And they go up onto the catwalk and they go up onto the stage. And there are these crowds of adults who are totally aroused. And they are cheering and they're wild. Sometimes they're throwing money. And they're watching these children. Can you think of your child or your grandchild, your niece or your nephew in that situation? Because that's what CBC wants you to imagine, because they're promoting this. They're saying this is good and this is all right, this is healthy. Before this Drag Kids program aired on July 25th, they aired a promotional piece on their CBC Kids News channel. And on that piece, they featured the 4 children. And they were showing them as this is the greatest thing in the world. And they're showing this promo piece to children because they want to convince other children that this is okay. It's absolutely reprehensible. We brought our concerns to CBC Ombudsman Jack Nagler. Jack Nagler is the Ombudsman. He is supposed to provide accountability. He is supposed to provide oversight to make sure CBC is following ethical guidelines and standards. We presented it to him before Drag Kids went to air, and we have been bombarding him with phone calls and emails. We presented tens of thousands. He has admitted that in the month of July, he received more complaints about drag kids than any other single issue. Number one issue in July. Do you think he would investigate? Number one issue, we're making an allegation that there may be sexual exploitation of children. We're saying this is something that might promote child porn and pedophilia. Do you think he would investigate? Should he? Yes. If one person comes to him and gives that type of complaint, he should investigate. But if 21,000 people come to him and bring a complaint of child sexual exploitation, what is wrong when he is doing nothing? Nothing. He just said, oh, it's the number one complaint we received in July. He didn't even do a review, not a formal review. He said he was sorry that there are so many people offended. That's what I heard. He's sorry you're offended. Shame.
And catching a little respite with another protester and Mr. Gould before the next conversation.
About the case in Hamilton, Dr. Steve Terlucas, who went as far as the Superior Court of Ontario, where he lost in court, but two of the judges did say that parental rights should be respected. But what people don't know is that the Attorney General's office, this is the province of Ontario, the Hamilton Wentworth School Board, where his children go to school, and the Elementary Teachers Federation, the elementary union, had together 6 lawyers in the courtroom against this man's one lawyer, and what we simply wanted was what actually is now in place, to be told when the curriculum would be taught, and he could opt his children out because his belief is Greek Orthodox. But it really is, people know it's our taxes are being used, like the CBC, this drag kids, this program, to go against the individual parent. They're not listening to us. They're simply misusing our tax money.
Yeah, I was just at the protest against the CBC's programming for drag kids, and just find that a little bit ends up promoting something close or akin to pedophilia. And it's a wonder to me how taxpayer-funded organization can be supporting something which is under the criminal code. And it's, our future generations who are being destroyed here. And I also find it interesting that a lot of people don't understand the ramifications of where this is all going. It doesn't take that much imagination, that much thinking to see where step A goes to step B goes to step C. And the other issues surrounding that.
In an anti-CBC program demonstration.
For drag kids?
It is for drag kids, and it's amazing how many people don't realize what is going on these days with the exploitation of children for purposes that are fairly obscene. And we protest. We have been protesting. We are now overheated and are sitting and having a think about things, but it is something that is of utmost importance that every parent, every adult should know that this thing is going on with so-called drag queens, and they are abusing children.
I'm also really concerned about the emphasis that schools are placing on not ordinary things like arithmetic or reading or being literate or history. They're also pushing this LGBTQ, etc. agenda, where it gets a little bit past the point of accepting people, with different backgrounds and different mindsets. It goes past a little bit too much emphasis on something that's really not necessary.
Okay, I'm here with my friends. We've just finished with the protest against the CBC for their abhorrent behavior with respect to the drag the trans, the pedophilia that's coming in, and we've just heard too how LGBT, I'm getting really tired of people accusing me of being against the LGBT community, but it's the LGBT community that is spawning these groups, and they're not standing up. They got their rights. Well, guess what? When you have your rights, your responsibilities are to participate. And when you see this kind of thing happening to children, you have a responsibility, LGBT people, to get in there and to fight along with the rest of us. Join forces and stop this insanity and this ruination of our next generation of children.